Hi, I'm Chris Walker. I'm the founding director of Bright White Limited. We started in 2004, but I've been working in this field since 1995. I'm the lead designer for all major projects at Bright White, and we spent a lot of that 17 years since we started trying to work out exactly what we do. Sounds like a silly question, but we we've been called, and we said to people that we were interpretive designers, and that's okay, but that means something very specific to a very small number of people, and actually I don't think it does a very good job of communicating. And considering that our profession is about communication, we were working on improving that. I'm also a trustee of our professional body, the Association for Heritage Interpretation. And just as a slight aside there, linking back to something that Rachel just touched on, the AHI has just for the first time in its history agreed a code of ethics, which I suggest would be quite interesting to this group to have a look. You'll find it on the website, just a AHI code of ethics. It certainly within the profession, this role of interpretive design is how it's referred to. But we eventually, some time ago, we realized that what we actually do is that we help individuals and communities to tell their stories. And so I'd like to take you through a few different projects, not in the order that we created them or built them, but in actually the order that they occurred in history. And the reason for that is that I hope in doing so, it will help to draw out an ethical question and challenge that we're facing. So the oldest project I'd like to refer to, one hopefully some of you will be familiar with, the Battle of Bannockburn Visitor Centre for the National Trust of Scotland, in partnership with Historic Environment Scotland, Glasgow School of Art, and a few others. But the community that's being represented here, I think there's probably three, I could argue, three communities. Firstly and foremost, it's the historical community of 700 years ago, that really created this environment where they created an independent nation of Scotland. So the historical story as we would know it, lead protagonist being Robert Bruce, of course. But secondly, about the Bannockburn community, over the years, they have this asset, this heritage asset, the battlefield that they live near. There's nothing has ever been found on the battlefield. No object can be said to be from the Battle of Bannockburn, but you've got this huge battlefield with quite a lot known about where the battle took place. But I'd also argue in this project was representing or telling the story of a community of historians who've kept that story alive over years, interpreting it and reinterpreting it for different audiences. So this project launched in 2014, which was to coincide with the independence referendum, and used a variety of different immersive techniques to tell stories. So just go back to the beginning, what visitors see. They're introduced with a 3D stereoscopic theatre production, like based on Victorian paper theatre, which sets the scene. It takes you quickly to the point where it explains why there were 30,000 people on a battlefield facing each other with very sharp pieces of metal in their hands. And then next into a 3D stereoscopic immersive environment where, although the space is only as big as a badminton court, tennis court, actually it feels like you're in the middle of the field, sorry. And here, using motion capture, the partners at Glasgow School of Art helped to recreate some of the battle techniques and battle weaponry that was used. And there's just a slide of the mocap happening over in Glasgow. But you also met 5 characters from each side, from five from the army of Robert Bruce and 5 from the army of Edward, and you could ask them questions, fundamental questions, but each one of them had an interesting snippet of information to give you that would help you in your mission to win in the battle when you got to the battle table. There was also real objects there, so that people, although the content was being delivered in the digital domain, you could go and grab that spear or that piece of armor that you could see in the image and feel its texture, lift it up, feel how much it weighs. But of course, the reason for all of that early stage in the visit is to get to this place, the battle table, which uses LiDAR data and machine cutting processes to recreate an exaggerated Z-scale map of the battlefield perimeter, and then project down onto that with projection mapping, where using straight computer game real-time tactical 30-person simulator, the audience play out their battle of 2014. And then we can compare it at the end to where that is in reference to modern day Sterling. And of course, the interpreter will always finish by contrasting and comparing that and giving the actual story of what happened on the battlefield as best is known by the historians in 700 years ago. That slide there just gives you an idea of the 3D terrain with Stirling Castle there sat on the scarp. Incredibly engaging for lots of different audiences, multi-generational. I've witnessed 90-year-olds stood next to 7-year-olds, both discussing battle tactics there. And the final part, the epilogue, is a return to this stereo. You can just see the hazed image there showing your left and right eye. The stereo story of the formation of the Declaration of Arbroath in the epilogue. Lots of different forms of immersion. Sort of it's a halfway house, I think, between modern XR techniques and traditional exhibitions, and a blend of different media, but predominantly there about theatre and participatory theatre. So this project was actually created in 2009, and it's the Bliss Hill, the Ironbridge Gorge World Heritage Site, and it was a 360 projection space that had a particular job to do. It had to get visitors from present day back to the Victorian period to remind them that the kind of chocolate box village that they're about to visit at Bliss Hill had these really quite harsh industrial underpinnings, you know, right in the middle of the beginning, actually, sorry, of the Industrial Revolution. So this space took you in. It had a huge sound system, surrounded you with scenes of use of steam hammers, of the transportation that was there, and the lifeblood through the World Heritage Site as they combined sort of coal, iron and steel, coal and iron to create the new bridge, the Iron Bridge, the world's first iron bridge there in Shropshire. Fast forward a bit to Second World War, and this project completed in 2015 is the Forever Project for the National Holocaust Centre and Museum. Now, the person whose stories we're telling here is of 10 survivors of the Holocaust. And now we're getting into a point where the survivors are actually still alive, and we can not just try and work out what was said or use a historical record, but actually ask them. So this project involved asking each survivor on average 1,000 different questions, and then chopping the resulting footage up into clips that represented a full answer, and then creating an installation at the National Holocaust Centre where audiences today can go and watch the presentation and ask their question and get an answer. Slightly further forward in time again for the Norwegian Oil Museum, the Pioneer Divers, in conjunction with the publication of this book, The North Sea Divers, which is a document, documents the story of the pioneer divers from whom important information was withheld about their health of working in deep sea diving. And one of the reasons suggested in the work that that information was withheld was that the supply of oil from Norway was so important that in fact it was kept secret, and a lot of them died, and a lot of them still today suffer from terrible respiratory illnesses. So this book really set the record straight. It was funded by the Norwegian government, and alongside that book was an exhibition which used a variety of different immersive techniques here, a 180-degree projected diving simulator, which takes you on an average working trip for the divers, just to really viscerally and without any kind of written word, just show you exactly what they did and what a weird world it was that they worked in, more akin to kind of space exploration than anything on dry land. And that work was created with the assistance of the divers who survived. So all the radio chatter in the diving bell, every visual reference, every fact was checked with them at multiple stages throughout. So we have the stamp of approval from them that that's what we're representing is how it was. And bringing it to the latest project that we've completed, funded by Innovate UK, we have worked with the American musician Nile Rodgers to tell his story, and that takes the form of a similar to the approach at the National Holocaust Centre, where we asked hundreds of questions. With Nile, we did that and filmed it specifically for virtual reality, and this was in conjunction with some really advanced research into how to represent a human form in virtual reality. So when you put the headset on, you see in front of you a chair, an empty chair in stereo, really great quality. Nile walks in, comes in, sits down next to you, facing you, and you strike up a conversation, and you can ask him your questions. And so there, that and the National Holocaust Centre project, we were never leading Nile to answer a question in a particular way. It's literally a process of documentation. So the ethical challenge that I think I'd want to sort of draw out from that is that when we're dealing with living people, or even for periods of history where the historical record is detailed and includes quotable utterances mentioned by people, I think the ability for us to be completely honest about what we know is far greater. The further we go back in time, the more we have to rely on reconstructions or renderings of characters, start getting into more trickier ethical areas there as well. So yeah, just in summary, we're really keen to try and work out a way of being able to work with historical figures in that way, in a more robust way than the artistic representations that we get at the moment, which comes through film and TV. And that's analogous, I think, to the topic of deep fakes, because the problem with deep fakes is that you have to realistically represent the way somebody speaks, what they would say, and that's really hard, actually. That is incredibly hard to do, and you find deepfakes are usually very short if they're high quality. There's something about the process of looking at deepfake versus authentic capture that I think will give us some clues going forward, thinking about where we're going next, as to how we might be able to portray historical figures for whom we don't have actual utterances and for whom we cannot ask questions as we're interpreting history. Okay. Thank you very much.